Right now, wherever you're sitting, you're inside a box. For walls, a roof, maybe a door that locks. But somebody somewhere a very, very long time ago had to think of this idea for the first time ever. No blueprint, no YouTube tutorial, no hardware store down the street. Just a person, standing in the open air, cold, scared of the dark, watching something with teeth circle just outside the firelight. That decision, that one simple, stubborn decision, is the reason you have a roof over your head tonight. Today, we're going all the way back to find the very first house ever built by a human being. Not a cave, not a hole in the ground, an actual built by hand, planned out structure. Early humans lived exposed, totally exposed. They slept under trees. They slept in the open grass. If they got lucky, they found a cave or a rocky overhang, and that was basically five-star accommodation for the Stone Age. A cave isn't a house. Cave is just there. Nature made it. You didn't build it, you didn't design it. Caves were prime real estate for bears, for hyenas, for lions. Moving into a cave sometimes meant evicting something with claws first. For an enormous stretch of human history, shelter was passive. It was find, not build. If you're following herds of animals for food, and your only shelter option is whatever cave happens to be nearby, you're stuck. A cave has one opening usually, which sounds safe until you realize it also means one way in, one way out. Somebody looked at this situation and had a genuinely revolutionary thought. What if I didn't have to search for shelter? What if I could just make one? That idea is arguably one of the most important ideas in the entire history of our species. It's right up there with fire, right up there with the wheel. Let's go to the south of France. Beautiful coastline, sunny beaches, the French Riviera today. Back around 400,000 years ago, this same stretch of coast was home to a group of early humans, likely Homo erectus. In the 1960s, a French archaeologist named Henry de Lumley was digging in a place called Terra Amata, right in Nice, France. He found patterns, rows of small holes in the ancient soil, arranged in an oval shape, larger post holes along the edges, stones stacked up in a rough circle around the outside. And in the middle of all of it, a hearth, an oval shelter maybe 20 feet long, 8 feet wide, with a small fire burning right in the center. Outside, the ocean. Inside, warmth, light, and safety from whatever was prowling in the dark. Not every archaeologist today fully agrees with de Lumley's original interpretation. Science works like that. Evidence gets revisited, debated, argued over for decades. Even the skeptics generally agree that something intentional was happening at that site. Repetition means intention. Repetition means someone learned something and then taught it to someone else. Now let's jump forward in time into what might be the single most jaw-dropping example of ancient construction. We're heading to Eastern Europe and we're going back to the last ice age. A cold, open, windswept plain called the Mammoth Steppe. Almost no trees. What do you do when there are no branches? Early humans did something that still genuinely shocks people. They built houses out of mammoth bones. Archaeologists have uncovered multiple sites, Mazyrik, Mezin, and others across Ukraine, where the remains of these bone dwellings are still sitting there. Imagine a circular structure maybe 15 to 20 feet across. The outer wall isn't wood. It's built from mammoth skulls, jawbones, leg bones, and tusks, stacked and interlocked like some kind of prehistoric Lego set, except the pieces weigh hundreds of pounds each. Some of these structures used the remains of dozens of mammoths. Some estimates put it as high as 60 or more animals for a single dwelling. These bones were likely scavenged over time, collected from mammoths that had already died naturally, or from the remains of many separate hunts. The skulls were often arranged in a specific pattern, forming a base ring. Jawbones stacked on top, almost like brickwork. Long bones and tusks were used as structural supports, leaning inward to help form a dome shape at the top. Over this entire bone skeleton, they likely stretched animal hides, weighed down at the edges with more bones or stones. Inside, archaeologists have found hearths, tools, and evidence of long-term habitation. They were living there through brutal Ice Age winters. They needed to understand structural engineering, even if they didn't have that word for it. You are not lifting a mammoth skull by yourself. They needed teamwork. No trees? Fine. We'll build with bone. Now let's go somewhere a little warmer and a little more intact. We're heading to the shore of the Sea of Galilee to a site called Ohalo II. This site is special because of preservation. The site was submerged underwater for a huge chunk of its history. When water levels dropped again in modern times, archaeologists got access to a roughly 23,000-year-old settlement. Researchers found the remains of several oval-shaped huts, built using branches and wild plant stems, tamarisk, willow, and wild grasses. One of the huts even had preserved traces of what looks like bedding material and plant matting on the floor. A 23,000-year-old floor mat. They were built close to a hearth, positioned to take advantage of the lake's resources. Fish, birds, wild grains growing nearby. A small community was living there, not just one isolated family passing through. People gathering wild wheat and barley, grinding it on stone tools, weaving plant stems into walls, sleeping on plant fiber bedding next to a fire. House building wasn't a single invention that happened once. It happened again and again independently in different environments. For walls, a roof, a hearth, because that solution actually works wherever you are. Let's slow down for a second, because I want to actually walk through how this construction process worked, step by step. Step 1, site selection. You needed a spot near fresh water, near a windbreak, near building materials, near food sources. Step 2, gathering materials. Collecting long, flexible branches from young trees or saplings. Willow was a favorite because it bends without snapping. In treeless regions, it meant collecting bone, tusk, and hide instead. Step 3, the frame. Early builders would plant branches into the ground, then bend the tops inward and lash them together, creating a dome shape. A dome distributes weight and wind pressure evenly across the whole surface, rather than concentrating stress on flat walls. Step 4, the covering. Layers of bark, woven mats of reeds and grass, animal hides stretched and pegged down. The goal was always the same: block wind, block rain, trap heat, and create a barrier between the family inside and the world outside. Step 5, the hearth. Almost every single one of these ancient structures has one thing in common: a fire pit, usually right in the center. Fire meant cooked food, which meant easier digestion and more available nutrients. Fire meant light to work by after dark. Fire meant protection because most predators are not exactly lining up to walk into a bright, smoky fire. Fire meant a gathering point, a reason for the whole family to sit together, talk, tell stories, teach skills to children. The hearth was the heart of the house, literally and socially. Step 6, the entrance. Early builders had to think about doorway placement too, usually angling the opening away from the prevailing wind. Sometimes low enough that you'd have to duck to enter, which helped trap warm air inside and kept cold drafts from rushing straight in. This was engineering. Real, functioning, tested by survival engineering. Why did humans bother? Why go through all that effort when you could just keep sleeping in whatever cave you stumbled across? First, there's climate control. A built shelter could maintain a stable, livable temperature even when the outside world was freezing or blazing hot. That stability meant more energy available for everything else: hunting, gathering, tool-making, raising children. Second, there's protection from predators. A defined, enclosed structure with a single controllable entrance is infinitely safer. Third, there's privacy and social structure. Once you have walls, you have the concept of inside versus outside. The house didn't just protect bodies. It organized relationships. Fourth, houses allowed for storage. Tools, dried food, furs, firewood. You could store food for winter. You could keep tools safe and dry instead of losing them or leaving them scattered. Fifth, maybe most importantly of all, a house created continuity. If you build a shelter and it works, you don't necessarily abandon it the next morning. You might return to it. You might improve it. You might teach your children how you built it. That continuity is arguably the seed of everything that came after: villages, towns, cities, civilizations. For an enormous stretch of human history, even after people started building huts, life was still largely nomadic. You'd build a shelter, live in it for a season, maybe come back to the same spot next year. but you were still moving. Somewhere around 11,000 to 12,000 years ago, something changed. This period is tied closely to agriculture. Once humans figured out they could plant seeds, tend crops, and control their own food supply, they didn't need to move anymore. This is where we start seeing the first genuinely permanent settlements. Places like Jericho, with some of the earliest evidence of permanent stone architecture. Instead of bent branches and hide coverings, people started building with mud brick and stone. Round houses at first. Over the following few thousand years, these round structures gradually gave way to rectangular ones, which are more space efficient. Easier to build in clusters side by side, sharing walls, which is basically the origin of the very first neighborhoods. Once houses became permanent, they started reflecting the people who lived in them in a whole new way. Floors got plastered smooth. Walls got decorated. Separate rooms started appearing for separate purposes. A place to sleep, a place to store grain, a place to cook. The house stopped being just a survival tool. It started becoming an expression of identity, of permanence. That is an enormous psychological shift for a species that had spent hundreds of thousands of years moving constantly. Building a permanent house is, in a very real sense, an act of confidence in the future. It's a statement that says, I plan to still be here. Once you have permanent houses clustered together, everything else starts to snowball fast. Permanent houses mean permanent communities. Permanent communities mean shared resources. A shared well, shared storage, shared defenses. Not everyone needs to hunt or farm anymore if the group is stable enough that some people can focus on toolmaking or pottery. Better houses mean healthier populations, because stable shelter reduces exposure and improves survival rates for children. Growing populations need more houses, built closer together, which starts forming the layout of actual villages. Villages that last long enough and grow large enough start needing organization, leadership, trade with neighboring villages. Eventually, written records to keep track of who owns what, who traded what, who owes what. Cities, governments, trade networks, writing systems, entire civilizations, you can trace a genuine, direct line of cause and effect all the way back. That first person who decided a bent branch, tied at the top, covered in hide, with a small fire burning inside, was better than sleeping exposed. The house isn't just where civilization happens. In a lot of very real ways, the house is what made civilization possible in the first place. So why does any of this matter today? I mean, you've got walls. You've got a roof. You're not exactly at risk of a cave lion wandering into your living room tonight. Every single time you close your front door at night, you are participating in one of the oldest continuous behaviors in all of human history. You're doing something that connects you directly to a person standing on a beach in ancient France 400,000 years ago, bending a branch into an oval frame. You're doing something that connects you to a family on the freezing mammoth steppe, stacking bones into a dome to survive an ice age winter. You're doing something that connects you to people sitting by a lake in ancient Israel, weaving reeds together, 23,000 years before anyone invented a single written word. The materials changed. The scale changed enormously, but the core instinct hasn't changed even slightly. Not in 400,000 years. There's something genuinely comforting about that. In a world that feels like it's changing at lightning speed, this one basic human need has stayed exactly the same. This one basic human need, the need for shelter, for a defined inside separate from the chaos of outside, has stayed the same since the very first house was ever built. So next time you walk through your front door, or lie down under your own roof tonight, take 1 second, just 1 second, to actually notice it. Notice the walls. Notice the roof over your head. Because you're standing inside the end result of an idea that took hundreds of thousands of years to perfect. Countless failed attempts, freezing nights, collapsed frames, and generation after generation of trial and error to perfect. Somebody, somewhere, a very long time ago had to be the first person brave enough or maybe just cold enough to try. If you found this as fascinating as I do, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want more deep dives into the hidden history. I'll see you in the next one.